of party and state institutions include establishing a party and state institutional function system that is well conceived, fully built, procedure-based, and efficiently functioning, and also forming a CPC leadership system that ensures a law-based administrative governance system, a world-class armed forces system, and a sound work system of people's organizations. The CPP Central Committee also called for improved relations between central and local authorities, that while the central authorities will strengthen macro management, the local ones should carry out orders from the top to the detail, and more decision-making power should also be given to organs at and below the provincial level. And the document stressed better systems of market supervision, natural resources and environmental management, and public services management. Back to you.
Tambo, now the third plenary usually takes place in the second half of the year, but this year it was held just before the two sessions are getting started. Why is that?
Well, indeed, it's rare that China's Communist Party holds its Central Committee's third plenary session less than a week before the annual sessions of China's top legislature and political advisory body in Beijing. And usually it's being held in the fourth quarter of the year. And it's been widely reported that such a tight schedule indicates that China is going to introduce a massive reform on party and state institutions that needs deliberating at the upcoming political season in March. At the moment of 40th anniversary of China's opening up and reform policy, and China has, typically initiated cabinet structural reforms every 5 years since the early 1980s. And so far, 7 such reforms have made the central government leaner and much more efficient.
Thank you very much, Tambo in Beijing. This year's two sessions is the first since the Communist Party's 19th National Congress, which was held last October. So they have some added appeal for many overseas scholars and economists. CGTN got the thoughts of some experts from various fields, and today we'll hear from Professor Kerry Brown from the Lao China Institute at London's King's College. He said fulfilling the goals set at the 19th National Congress wouldn't be a simple task. CGTN's Chuck Tinte has more.
After joining the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in London, Professor Brown served as First Secretary Beijing from 2000 to 2003. He's now director of the Lao China Institute at King's College in London. His main research interests include Chinese politics and Chinese President Xi Jinping.
I think he represents that sort of confidence and that sense of aspiration, and in a sense is as an effective mouthpiece of that. The real story is that of the Chinese people working hard in the last, the last 70, 80 years to try and achieve this moment of national renaissance. So this is kind of happening. It's a moment of confidence, but of course it's also a moment of lots of big challenges that can't be forgotten.
Last year, President Xi called for building a community of shared future for all humankind in Geneva. Professor Brown said this represents the president's support for globalization with Chinese characteristics, something which the West might not be familiar with.
So I think we're entering into a period of hybridity, and that means that there's going to be some changes and adjustments that people need to be flexible about. And really that's kind of what he represents, a flexibility and a kind of maybe a contribution by China to this global debate.
Professor Brown said he's looking forward to this year's two sessions. As he understands it, the CPPCC was established to seek a consensus between different sections of society, while the NPC is China's parliament. He holds that the political meetings give everyone a chance to be involved in policy making.
The sort of real benchmark is how do you look after the least well off? And so at the 19th Party Congress there's policies about how to look after the poor, and those things need to be attended to. It's not just making people wealthier, it's making even those who are right at the bottom better off, and of course there needs to be a lot of work done there.
With policy frameworks set during October's CPC National Congress, Professor Brown feels the two sessions will focus on the environment and health, as well as ways to boost economic growth.
The CPPCC spokesman will be holding a press conference in a matter of minutes. For more, let's go to our reporter Wang Hui, who will be covering the conference. Hi, Wang Hui. There must be a lot of anticipation ahead of the press conference opening. What's new for this year's CPPCC?
Well, Zhao Yang, with just 15 minutes before the briefing starts, we can tell that it's already fully packed. It's a big rally of global journalists. And to us, it's like a competition as well, because everybody's trying to catch the attention from the podium so they can ask a question. And I can feel very strong chemistry here. And more than 3,000 reporters are covering the two sessions this year, and 1/3 are from overseas media outlets. Although the opening ceremony of this year's CPPCC will be held tomorrow, this press conference is the first major event of this political season, and the answers today will set the tone for this 2-week-long event. So that's why this conference is drawing so much attention. As for what's new, a bit of background first. The National Committee of the CPPCC elects its members every 5 years, and this year's event will be the first session of this new committee, the 13th. So while the CPPCC session usually lasts about 11 days, this year we'll need 2 more days. There are over 2,000 members this year, and half of them are new. Zhao Yang.
Wang Hui, what do you think are the top issues this year that will be mentioned at the conference?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the spokesman first. The spokesman for this press conference is 65-year-old Wang Guoxing. He was also spokesman for the past 2 years. Before working for the government, he was a veteran journalist, working for China Radio International for over 20 years, and he was their DC correspondent for a time. So he's very familiar with both domestic and international media work. But he said he's still very cautious as the press conference involves so much attention and political sensitivity, and his answers could easily cause controversy. And the last year's press conference lasted for 4 hours with 18 questions. This year's starts late, so I think it will be more condensed this year. I've asked around about journalists what they want to ask. It's the amendment to China's constitution. The constitution embodies the people's will, and the country adheres to the Communist Party of China's leadership while making and implementing constitution and the laws. The CPPCC members do not vote on the amendment, but they will be closely engaged in other ways. They will discuss the draft of the constitutional amendments, and they are likely to raise suggestions. So I hope the spokesman will give us more details later. And economic issues always draw great attention, especially this is the first 2 sessions after October's Party Congress. How the spirit of this major political event can be translated into real action to boost the country's economy. Also, the GDP growth rate last year was 6.9%. It's the first acceleration of increase in the past 7 years. How will Beijing interpret this change? This could be another focus of today. In the past 2 years, questions were frequent about China's foreign policy. This year, the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue seems more pressing. What pragmatic and effective measures can be taken to resolve this issue? Other questions are likely to deal with poverty alleviation, medical reform, foreign trade, and issues related to Hong Kong and Taiwan. Back to you, Zhao Yang.
Thank you very much, Wang Hui, at the press conference of the CPPCC. All right, well, let's turn back to our studio guests, John and Michele. Now, well, we heard our reporter there give a little preview of potential questions asked. Which topics do you think would likely come up? And also, if you were there, what would you want to ask, John?
Yeah, well, she mentioned a couple of things already, but I just want to add a few more things. I think there are, the most basic is the functional things they have to do. For example, they have to approve the nominations for cabinet members, the ministerial level people. It's been done during this session. Also, we've heard from the People's Congress, Party Congress, is that we're going to set up a new organization, right? The Anti-Corruption Supervisory Commission. This is going to be, approved during these sessions. Will be discussed, I'm pretty sure, at CPPCC. Another thing is that the government is going to have a reform, and we're going to have some realignment of these ministries. And I think these things will be also discussed and approved during the next 2 weeks or so. Other than these two things, I think I think there's also we're going to talk about the amendment to the Constitution, which is a big deal, and as well as the normal topics during these sessions. For example, the economic situation, foreign policy. Anti-corruption is very big, and also poverty alleviation. I think these are the topics of most concern to people right now, also most concern to the Communist Party right now.
Well, I just want to follow up to what you mentioned there at the start about this change of state institutions and also this new supervisory system. Tell us a bit more about that. Why is that? Why is there this change?
Yeah, well, as you know, we have been engaged in this anti-corruption campaign for quite a few years already, right? And we have rounded up a lot of corrupt officials. To be honest, I think we have to be candid about this. Yes, we do. We did round up a lot of corrupt officials, but this has been done pretty much through the existing system, where we have, the party has its own anti-corruption organization, and the law enforcement has its own organization. So sometimes they have these overlapping functions. So I think the idea of setting up a supervisory commission is to consolidate these efforts into a coherent and uniform effort campaign against corruption, so such that things can be done sort of in a more systematic way and more organized way.
All right. Well, Michele, the same question from earlier on to you then. What issues do you think are very pressing for China?
Something we mentioned is about the poverty alleviation, which I think for China, for the whole society, is a very important goal for two reasons. One is, of course, for the people who are affected. Let's not forget China has done a lot of effort in reducing poverty from 800 million to around 40 million at the moment, 3-4% of the population, and this is the most difficult part, is the last mile. So while these people, of course, will be affected, I think this is important for China to send a very important signal to the rest of the world that China does what it plans to do. And so far China has pretty much always met all the objectives, economic, social objective, GDP growth, and many other areas, and this is a very difficult one. If China succeeds in doing that, that would give China a lot of credibility to, for example, try to help other parts of the world to reduce poverty. And we are European, and we look, for example, and we hope that China can duplicate the success in Africa, because China is at the moment maybe the only hope that Africa has to get rid of poverty that has actually gone up over the last few years. So we have a very unbalanced situation. In China, poverty has gone down in terms of numbers. In Africa, has gone up. And so with this, let's say, test that China has done in its own country, it can try to duplicate it elsewhere. And the other important thing is, I think, is the green economy. Let's not forget these poor people still, but China has done exceptionally well, unprecedented in the history of mankind, such as sustained growth for 4 decades, below 10% for such a large country. This baffles us economists on how can it be done. And now that we are not yet at the moderately well-off society, the Xiaokang objective, but China now needs to move into the green economy, because after all this growth, there's been some cost into the environment, and I think the leadership now fully understands that it can rearrange the objective, maybe lower growth, better quality growth, and clean up some of the issues that have been created. And so we are also again surprised by China's advancement into clean energy, electric vehicles, renewable, again the leader in the world. And so we look up China as, again, a way that we in the rest of the world can actually follow China's example. So China has a big responsibility, do well for its own citizens, clean up, and set the example for the rest of the world. Very difficult, but another challenge for the next 40 years, maybe.
Right. Well, another issue that a lot of people are concerned about is housing, and China's property market remained stable in January. New residential home prices were down year on year in 11 of the 15 major cities considered to be the hottest markets. Insiders say that 2018 will be a key year for the government to introduce a long-term mechanism. CGTN's Wang Xiaozhou reports.
A stable trend across the board. In the first month of 2018, China's home prices edged down slightly in major cities. New home prices in Shanghai and Guangzhou saw a 0.4% decline in January, while Beijing posted a slightly increase on a monthly basis. The country's real estate market has been cooling since last year, building speculation that the government will start loosening property policies in the near future. But industry insiders disagree.
Central government has persistently saying that there is no way to lose the current regulation policies, and I believe it. I think in a period of time, the control of the price hike is definitely the most important thing in this real estate industry.
Insiders say that 2018 will be a crucial year to flesh out a long effect mechanism for China's property market, and both developers and home buyers are closely watching on if the government is going to come up with new policies on property taxes and ownership reforms.
We saw the land supply increase the last year, particularly for the use like long-term rental housing, affordable housing, joint ownership housing, which will definitely balance a little bit more between demand and supply.
My personal opinion is that yes, we do need long-term policies like property tax. It's one of the policies the government is considering to implement in our market. On the other hand, financial policies is also another one which may maintain the stability of the property market. Other than these two, the ownership of the property, which is a fundamental thing of the property market. So there are many things, many ways we can do to maintain a long-term stability of the market.
Looking at the grand picture, commercial property usually reflects a country's macroeconomic growth. And in China, the sector is recovering thanks to favored policy on the tech and financial fronts.
In terms of sectors, it's interesting that technology company will continue to booming this year. Financial is another sector that we see the Chinese government start loosening or opening the market to international financial investors. Then we believe there will be a lot more iBanks wanted to be in China, and more iBanks already in China will continue to grow.
Long effect mechanism sort of become a buzzword when it comes to China's property policies. How to create a healthy and effective long-term policy, and will the most anticipated tax reform will be discussed during the two sessions? We'll find out. Wang Xiaozhou, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, John, I want to get your thoughts on the housing market in China. How do you foresee the housing market in the next while, in the next period?
Yeah, I think the era of rapid housing price run-up is gone for good. I think so, and I hope so as well. For too long, China's real estate price in major cities have been running up so fast that it's starting to impair the competitiveness of companies and businesses in these big cities. I think we have to come to what Mr. Xi has said. Housing is a place for living, not just for speculation. Right? So I think the government is starting to implement more policies to control the property market. I think the property market, this rampant growth is mostly, has a lot to do with the local sort of budget situation that's relying on selling land. So that situation is sort of trying to get away from this. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Another thing is that let's take a look at the example in Xiong'an.
Just to interrupt you quickly, John, we're
starting to
looking at some the images right now.
We'll talk about
pictures are showing the CPPCC press conference room. That press conference should get underway in a matter of minutes. All right, well, while we're waiting for that, all right, we're going to the live press conference now. The CPPCC is a political advisory body, and their session opens formally on Saturday. That'll be followed by the NPC session on Monday. And together, this forms China's most important political season, taking place annually. CPPCC spokesperson Wang Guoqing will be briefing the media on what to expect from the CPPCC session. Now, this is China's political advisory body. Its members raised proposals concerning politics, the economy and social affairs to the NPC, which is the legislative body, that will then consider turning these into law. The tenure of the CPPCC members is 5 years. And it holds a session every year. So this year we have 2,158 people nominated as members. This is the 13th CPPCC National Committee. Just to give you an idea of the makeup of this body, about 60% of the members are from outside the Communist Party of China. And all 56 ethnic groups are represented.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The press conference of the first session of the 13th CPPCC National Committee now begins. On behalf of the Secretariat of the CPPCC session, I want to welcome all the Chinese and foreign journalists to the press conference. Today is China's traditional Lantern Festival. So, happy Lantern Festival. The press conference will last about 70 minutes. The spokesperson of the CPPCC session, Mr. Wang Guoqing, will first give you a briefing about the main program of the session, and then take your questions. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from the press, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be back to this room and meet with both old and new friends. Just now, the Secretary General said today is the traditional Lantern Festival in China. But I'm afraid that all of you and your colleagues will have to spend the festival busy with your reporting work. But still, I want to say Happy Lantern Festival to you all, and thank you for your hard work. I see we have a full house today. Before taking your questions, I am entrusted by the Secretariat to brief you about the program of the session. The first session of the 13th CPPCC National Committee will begin at 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon at the Great Hall of the People, and close on the morning of the 15th of March. The main program of the session includes hearing and deliberating the work report of the Standing Committee of the CPPCC National Committee and the report on proposal-related work, observing the first session of the 13th National People's Congress, hearing and discussing the government work report and other reports, discussing the draft amendment to the Constitution and the draft supervision law, deliberating and adopting the amendment to the Charter of the CPPCC, the political resolution of the first session of the 13th CPPCC National Committee and other resolutions and reports, electing the Chairman, Vice Chairman, Secretary General, and the Standing Committee members of the 13th CPPCC National Committee. During the session, there will be 2 plenary meetings, 13 group discussions, 1 joint sector discussion, and 3 press conferences. To facilitate your coverage of the session, we will, for the first time, arrange 3 group interviews in the form of CPPCC member corridor this year. The preparations for the session are concluded. The opening and closing meetings and the plenary meetings will be open to the press. Group and joint sector discussions that are open to the press will be pre-announced. Please follow our notice on the CPPCC website. Now, I will be willing to answer your questions about the session and the work of CPPCC. Thank you.
现在开始提问。
The floor is now open for questions. Before asking questions, please first identify your media affiliations. In the interest of time, please ask one question only.
开始提问。
The floor is open.
请中间第一排这位女记者。
谢谢。我是中央电视台央视网、央视新闻移动网的记者。我想请问发言人的是，我们知道了今年是换届之年，那么12届全国政协委员已经完成了他们的使命，而2100多名13届全国政协委员即将开始他们5年的任期。所以想在这里请问发言人的是，您如何评价过去5年政协的工作？有什么样的特点？有什么样的亮点？另外一个，您对于新一届的政协委员，他们在新时代履职有一些什么样的新期待？谢谢。
With China Central Television, the 5-year term of more than 2,000 members of the 12th CPPCC National Committee has come to an end, and over 2,100 new members will start their term. How would you comment on the work of the CPPCC, its features and highlights over the past 5 years? What are the expectations for the new members in performing their duties in the new era? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Before taking your question, I want to thank the media for your attention to CPPCC's work and sessions. Thank you for your coverage on our work. In the 5 years since the 18th Party Congress, the party and the country have experienced truly remarkable progress, and the CPPCC has further promoted unity and democracy, stayed pragmatic and enterprising, and enjoyed robust development. The advantages and features of socialism with Chinese characteristics have been demonstrated. And the all-round leadership of the CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, the CPPCC built on past achievements and made new progress. The 12th CPPCC National Committee had more than 2,200 members. They worked hard to fulfill their duties and did an outstanding job. The features and highlights of their work can be summed up in the following 4 points: improving consultation and deliberation, strengthening democratic oversight, increasing unity, and enhancing capacity building. These 4 points can be further developed with many amazing stories and many figures. I will not list them one by one. Tomorrow, at the opening of the CPPCC session, Chairman Yu Zhengsheng will, on behalf of the Standing Committee of the 12th CPPCC National Committee, deliver a report to review the CPPCC's work in the past 5 years. As for the next 5 years, it is stated in the report of the National Congress of the CPC that to develop socialist consultative democracy, a host of new thinking, viewpoints, and requirements are put forward. They can help advance the course of CPPCC in a new era as guidelines for theories and actions. The CPPCC will give top priority to studying and implementing the guiding principles of the 19th Party Congress and the Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics. We work hard to fully understand them and act on them. We will further increase political consensus, a work for national rejuvenation by pooling our positive energy. We will make new progress in fulfilling duties and contribute to securing a decisive victory in building a moderately prosperous society in all respects, striving for the great success of socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. We are confident that under the guidance of the Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, the CPPCC will get on a new look, make new accomplishments, and meet the requirements of the times and the people. Next question, please.
请东区第一排第2位这位记者。 谢谢，我是经济日报中国经济网的记者。去年年底召开的中央经济工作会议指出，我国经济发展进入了新时代，基本特征就是我国经济已由高速增长阶段转向高质量发展阶段。我们想请问发言人，政协委员们对当前的中国经济形势、对新时代中国经济发展前景、对突出高质量有何评价和分析？谢谢。
Economic Daily. At last year's Central Economic Work Conference, it was pointed out that China's economy has entered a new era and moved from a phase of high-speed growth to a stage of high-quality development. How do CPPCC members look at the current situation of the Chinese economy and China's economic prospects in the new era, especially high-quality development? Thank you.
经济问题是大家一直很关注的，也是我这个连续3年我们在准备的时候都认真准备的问题。那么回答得好，经济日报是专家能不能满意？到时候请你答复。2017年。
You will see if you're satisfied with my answers. In 2017, China delivered an encouraging economic annual report. Its GDP exceeded 82 trillion yuan. To put it into perspective, it's the combined total of the 5th to the 10th in the world GDP rankings, namely the UK, India, France, Italy, Brazil, and Canada. Its growth rate of 6.9% is quite impressive among leading economies in the world. At the workshop on macroeconomic outlook in January, CPPCC National Committee members said that despite the complexities at home and abroad last year, China's economy achieved steady progress and performed better than expected, both in quantity and in quality. To be specific, stable growth, employment, prices, and international balance of payments were secured. And there was a clear trend toward a better structure, new growth drivers, and greater efficiency. As for 2018, members believe that sustained and steady progress remains the dominating trend of China's economy. China has entered a new era of high-quality economic development. Members feel that it is important to be adaptive to the evolving challenges in the new era, understand what it's about in shifting from high-speed growth to high-quality development, and take such shifts as the top priority of economic work. So, first, to vigorously develop the real economy, second, to fend off various risks, and third, to deliver real results from reform, and fourth, continue to deepen supply-side structural reform. Fifth, to improve mechanisms for people's well-being. And some members said that high-quality development needs high standards, strict enforcement, and a conducive culture. High standard is a prerequisite to be supported by strict enforcement. And a conducive culture means the craftsmanship that strives for perfection. Xi Jinping's thought on socialist economy with Chinese characteristics for the new era is the overarching guideline for economic work at present and in the coming months and years. As long as we assimilate and translate it into reality, China in the new era will realize economic development with greater quality, efficiency, and sustainability. And the Chinese economy will continue to serve as an anchor and engine of global growth. Thank you.
请继续提问。请这位这个第二排的这穿红衣的第3位这个记者。
谢谢主持人，我是人民日报记者。脱贫攻坚是近2年来的一项重点工作，在对扶贫工作的审计中，却时不时爆出一些问题，不少问题已公开报道，我就不再提及了。请问发言人，政协委员们在调研中是不是也发现了类似问题？委员们认为，怎样才能从源头上解决这类问题？谢谢。
People's Daily. Poverty alleviation has been a major task in recent years. However, problems have been found in the auditing process and reported by the media, so I will not give the details here. Have CPPCC members found similar problems in their research? From their perspective, what can be done to prevent such problems? Thank you.
在过去5年里。
Over the past 5 years, China's poverty alleviation campaign has made crucial progress. Over 66 million people have been lifted out of poverty, and the poverty headcount ratio has notably dropped. So these achievements are well recognized. But in this major campaign, it is also natural that problems may happen from time to time. Last year, the CPPCC Standing Committee held a special discussion on the theme of locating the problems in the implementation of targeted poverty alleviation program and recommendations. In order to gain the full picture of the situation on the ground and locate the real problems, some 100 CPPCC members visited 75 counties with poverty and conducted a 4-month-long on-the-site survey. Talking about these field trips, let me share with you one piece of news report I saw. The story took place in mid-April in Huan County in the eastern Gansu Plateau. The weather was still quite cold at that time. Outside Genjia village, 2 men in dark suits who looked like government officials and a young guy were walking on a dusty road. They walked directly into the cave house of a local villager by the name Zhao Yongtang. Mr. Zhao didn't know the visitors. He only knew that they were 2 officials, more important than the village chief. They chatted with Mr. Zhao on his bed and asked his opinions on the implementation of the targeted poverty alleviation policy in the village. These 2 visitors were actually 2 CPPCC members of our supervision survey group on targeted poverty alleviation. They went to the village unannounced. It is through these unannounced private visits that they were able to get information about the worries of local villagers who were afraid to relapse into poverty. The complaints about the organization of poverty alleviation programs and heavy burden on the local government, and also the pressure that local officials face in coping with cumbersome performance inspections and examinations. Based on the results of these surveys, the CPPCC members have proposed solutions to the existing problems with some 40 survey reports and interventions in the discussion of standing committee meetings. The advices they offered include better coordinating the allocation of resources to ensure more targeted poverty alleviation, especially the scheduled poverty reduction in regions with abject poverty, combining poverty alleviation with capacity building and motivation to unleash the full potential of poor population. removing the root cause of poverty to lay a solid foundation for sustained and stable progress of poverty alleviation, paying close attention to potential risks and dangers, and taking active preventive steps, averting the practice of formality for formality's sake, reforming the examination method, and streamlining the process of poverty alleviation examination. Other advices include stepping up training to enhance the poverty alleviation capacity of local officials, and so on and so forth. This year, the CPPCC will hold another standing committee meeting on the theme of addressing the problems in the poverty alleviation work of regions with abject poverty to make further contribution to winning the battle against poverty and completing the building of a moderately prosperous society in all respects. Thank you.
后排记者一个机会，请那一位穿黑衣服的女士站着的那位女士提问。对，这个。
感谢主持人。我是光明日报融媒体记者。我们知道一直以来政府都在倡导为中小学生减负，但普遍反映孩子们的学习压力和负担依然不轻。我想请问发言人，怎样才能切实减轻学生负担，为孩子们创造一个快乐学习、健康成长的氛围与环境？谢谢。
Guangming Daily. The government has been calling for reduction of workloads for middle school and primary school students. But generally speaking, things remain hectic for children. What can be done to truly reduce the pressure so that the children could learn and grow healthily and happily? Thank you.
Reducing workload for middle and primary school students has always been a serious topic for the society. We have done some statistics which show that from 1951 to 2017, the government issued dozens of documents in this field, dozens of documents. But obstacles remain, just as a line of poem goes. After ascending one mountain, the climber only finds another one standing. Despite the course to the contrary for dozens of years, students in some places only find their school bags and extracurricular work heavier and heavier, and sleeping and rest time less and less. Statistics also show that Chinese middle and primary school students spend 2.82 hours on homework every day, which is almost 3 times longer than the world average. Many of you are familiar with the song, "Let's row the oars." According to the song, when we finish today's homework, let's enjoy our life. When I talk to the people around me, actually, the students can only finish their work very late in the evening. How can they enjoy their life and play on the boat? So reducing the burden for students is a very important topic for the whole society and for CPPCC members as well. We believe that effort in this field concerns the approach to education and human resources, related systems and mechanisms, and other deep-seated issues. It requires comprehensive measures and joint efforts of the whole society. The government needs to improve management and further deepen comprehensive educational reform. Focus shouldn't only be placed on enhancing students' ability to take exams. Instead, their well-rounded development should be advanced. A well-conceived evaluation system is needed, rather than merely using students' scores or the proportion of them entering schools of a higher grade as the only evaluation standard. So as to reduce pressure on schools teachers, students, and parents alike. Extra school educational institutions need to be put under strict regulation. The Ministry of Education and 3 other ministries in mid-February launched a special campaign in this field. Measures should be fully implemented to ensure that extra school education complements well-rounded education rather than encouraging exam taking or increasing burden on parents and students. It shouldn't be used to disrupt educational order, fuel social anxiety, or even become somebody's tool to make money. Recently, some media reported that some families cannot afford such heavy burden. And for schools, they need to keep to a well-conceived teaching approach and focus on the sound development of students. They need to conduct teaching in strict accordance with laws of teaching and curricular standards. And people now have lots of complaints about extra school education. And we believe it is important to pursue institutional innovation to form long-term mechanisms to cut students' workload, properly design the content and time of students' homework, and reduce burdens on both students and parents. For extracurricular education, proper guidance needs to be provided. It is hoped that parents can stop worrying about their kids losing at the starting point, so to speak. They are expected to avoid herd mentality in asking their kids to take extracurricular education and avoid putting extra burden on their kids. And students are expected to make good work and rest arrangements and foster efficient learning habits. Kids are the future of the motherland and hope of the nation. Reducing workload for middle and primary school students is indeed a big challenge. But for the kids, let me appeal here. We shouldn't merely talk the talk. We should really walk the walk. We should take solid steps, meet challenges head-on, and with concrete actions, we need to gradually reduce burden on students, the burden they shouldn't bear, so that they can really enjoy learning, grow up, and have a successful career. And for the first step, can I appeal here that the students need to sleep for 30 minutes or 1 hour more? Thank you for your question.
谢谢。发言人您好，我是人民政协报和人民政协网的记者。我们注意到，在这次的政协大会中，有一项重要的议程是政协章程的修改。能否请您简要地介绍一下这次的章程修改是基于什么考虑，有哪些主要内容？谢谢。
CPPCC Daily. Revising the charter of the CPPCC is high on the agenda of this session. Could you brief us on the ideas behind the revision and the changes to be made to the charter? Thank you.
谢谢你的问题。
Thank you for your question.
现行的政协章程啊，它的总体框架和总体
Well, the
框
overall
架和主要
framework
内容
and the main content of the existing CPPCC Charter was established back in 1982 at the 5th session of the 5th CPPCC National Committee. 3 revisions have been made over the past 30 years and more, and the revision this time around is proposed for 3 reasons. First, the 19th Party Congress put forth a host of important new thought, views, statements and measures. They should be reflected in the CPPCC Charter. And second, since the 18th Party Congress, General Secretary Xi Jinping made a series of important remarks on CPPCC's work, and the CPC Central Committee issued a host of important documents and arrangements arrangements on CPPCC-related work. They should be added to the Charter. And third, in the past 5 years, the best practices and experience by CPPCC at national and local levels should be institutionalized in the Charter. Well, as I said, a few modifications have been proposed, but the Charter largely remains unchanged. That is one of the major principles. That is to say, changes are made where it is necessary. As for the specifics, the draft amendment will be deliberated and revised at the plenary meetings and be made public after being adopted. So please wait for its adoption. Thank you.
请继续提问，请咱们这个中区第2排第1位那位记者提问。中区第2排第1位，对，就这边这第1位啊。
谢谢主持人，日本朝日新闻记者提问。我想问一下那个关于中日关系的问题。我们感到日中关系有复苏的迹象。今年两国将迎来日中和平友好条约缔结40周年，借此安倍首相也有意正式访问中国。那虽然两国之间依然存在很多问题和分歧，作为政协委员，你们怎么评价现在的中日关系？希望如何展开对于外交，还有对于日本有何期待？谢谢。
Asahi Shimbun. My question is about China-Japan relations. We've seen signs of recovery in China-Japan relations, and this year marks the 40th anniversary of the signing of China-Japan Treaty of Peace and Friendship. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe intends to take this opportunity to pay an official visit to China. We understand that there are still many issues between the two countries. And what is your comment on the current situation in China-Japan relations? And what is China's plan for diplomacy with Japan? And what does China expect from Japan? Thank you.
中国和日本一衣带水。
China and Japan are close-door neighbors that cannot move away from each other. China and Japan are both major countries in East Asia and the world's major economies. Therefore, China-Japan relations are consequential not just for the two countries, but also for the region and the world. We have taken note of some positive signals sent by the Japanese side lately on its relations with China, and also some positive signs in China-Japan relations. So it is our hope that the two sides will doubly cherish and seize the opportunity. And on the basis of the 4 political documents and 4-point principal consensus, continue to build up positive factors, bring bilateral relations back on track as quickly as possible, and create a proper atmosphere for high-level exchanges between the two countries. But I want to point out that the crux of the ups and downs in China and Japan relations lies in the flip-flop attitude of the Japanese government toward historical issues, and also the narrow-minded thinking of some Japanese politicians who see China as a strategic rival. A country that attempts to forget the past and does not face the history cannot win respect. And a country that bends on taking its neighbor as a strategic rival is doomed to lose its future. So I trust as long as one can truly take lessons from the past and look into the future, just as instructed by the political leaders of the older generation, and then truly bear in mind the well-being of people of both countries, China-Japan relations can escape the vicious cycle of ups and downs. We hope that China-Japan relations will continue to move in a positive direction. Thank you.
对，他站起来的这一位，对。
主持人好，发言人好，我是农民日报全媒体记者。此刻我为中国农民代言。我的问题是，十九大报告提出实施乡村振兴战略，人们关注这个战略和正在推进的城镇化战略如何衔接？请问发言人，政协委员对此有何思考和建言？谢谢。
Farmers Daily. Now I'm speaking on behalf of Chinese farmers. The rural vitalization strategy is laid out in the report delivered at the 19th Party Congress. We want to know how this strategy will be coordinated with the urbanization strategy, which is under implementation. Could you please share with us the thoughts and recommendations of CPPCC members on this front? Thank you.
农民日报为农民代言，名正言顺。
Well, the Farmers Daily is in good position to speak for the farmers.
中共中央国务院发布了今年的1号文件，这是党中央
Earlier this year, the
连
CPPCC
续
Central
15
Committee
年
issued the
发
number
布
one document,
关于
which is
3农
on
问题中央
agriculture.
1号文件。
This is for the 15th consecutive year that the Central Committee has issued a number one document on agriculture. This demonstrates the consistent commitment of the party and the government to agriculture-related work. With 4 decades of reform and opening up, fundamental changes have taken place in China's rural area. However, as a result of rapid urbanization, the weak links in rural development have been further exposed. In some places, problems such as industry hollowing out, empty nest households, and population aging have seriously stalled the progress of rural areas in achieving moderate prosperity with the same pace as urban areas. Therefore, the report to the 19th Party Congress has made reference to the rural vitalization strategy in 2 chapters and then labeled it as one of the 7 key strategies for completing the building of moderately prosperous society in all respects. The number one document of the CPPCC Central Committee issued this year has made specific arrangements for the implementation of this strategy. The rural vitalization strategy is an upgrade of the new socialist countryside program. It is a comprehensive concept with rich contents. It is not just about vitalization in the economic, social, and cultural spheres, but also about innovation in governance system and ecological progress. The implementation of the rural vitalization strategy must meet the new aspirations of farmers based on the conditions of the country and the rural area and focus on the goal of thriving business, pleasant living environment, social civility, effective governance, and of course, a prosperous life. It must pull the efforts of the whole society to pursue coordinated progress of urbanization and rural vitalization, and promote the all-round upgrade of the agricultural sector, all-round progress in the rural area, and all-round development of farmers. In the past 5 years, issues concerning rural development have been a constant subject of surveys and consultations organized by the CPPCC National Committee. The CPPCC members have conveyed the problems they discovered during these surveys to the relevant departments through the consultation platform and channels, and offered their suggestions in the form of reports. This year, the CPPCC National Committee has selected 10 consultation topics and two of them are related to rural development. One is on addressing the problems in the poverty alleviation work of regions with abject poverty, and the other is about cultivating a rural task force that knows about agriculture and cares about the development of rural areas and the farmers. I'm sure the CPPCC members will have a lot of good ideas to share after their surveys, and I hope you will report their ideas to the public and give a boost to the implementation of the rural vitalization strategy. Thank you.
请继续提问，请中区第一排的这位第二位这个男士。
好的，谢谢主持人。我是中国国际广播电台和国际在线的记者。那么近期呢，西方有舆论宣称呢，中国利用文化传播等方式在西方搞渗透，通过所谓的锐实力呢，对西方国家施加政治影响，干涉内政。那么我们也注意到啊，就是发言人，曾从事对外传播工作多年。那么我们也想请问，发言人对此有何评论？谢谢。
China Radio International. Some Western media claim that China is engaged in infiltration into the West through cultural communication and using sharp power to impose political influence on and interfere with the internal affairs of Western countries. Mr. Wang, you have worked in the field of communication for many years. What's your comment? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。
Thank you for your question.
炮制新词儿，
Well,
黑我们中国，这已经不是第一
it's
次。
not the first time when a phrase is invented to smear
我相
China,
信也不会是最后一次。
and it won't be the last.
所以，对于所谓的锐实力，我确实
We're
想
talking
说
about the so-called sharp power.
文明
Let me
是
say
因
that
交流而多彩，
exchanges enrich
人类呢
civilizations
是因交
and
流而进步。
propel human progress.
跨文化传播
Cross-cultural communication helps
和人民
enhance
之间的相互
mutual
了解，
understanding between countries
对
and
促
peoples,
进世界和平和
and
人类
plays
进
an
步
important
发挥
role
着
in
重要的
promoting world
我
peace
媒体的
and
朋友
human
这
progress.
点都很清楚。
And that, I think,
当今
is
中
quite
国
familiar
稳健
point
持
to
续的发展，
journalists.
日新月异的变化，
Sustained development
受到国际
and
社会的
remarkable
广泛
changes
关
in
注，
China have drawn
所以许多
international
人渴
attention.
望了解中国。
Many people want to know more about
中国的
China.
对外传播，本着
And
让
in
世
external
界了解
communication,
中国的
China
宗旨，
aims to present to the
一
world
直在努
an
力展示一个
all-dimensional
真
image
实、
of
立
a
体、
China
全
as
面
it
的
is.
中国形象。随着我们综合国力的提升，
As the overall
这几年
strength
这些年
grows,
我们对外传播
in
工作力
recent
度也
years,
在不断的加大。
China intensifies its work on external communication,
但是这不只是
which
为了展
is a
示我们
fact.
自己的形象，
We're
也是
not
为了更好的帮
only
助国际社会
working to
及时
present our own
准确
image,
全
but
面地
also
了
to
解
help
中
the international community
我们给提
to
供
get
信息
a
嘛，
full
让
picture
他
of
们
China
更
in a
好地了解
timely
我们。
and
原来
truthful
我们的
manner.
声音，出不去。
In the past,
现在我们
we cannot
有这个力
make
量，把我
ourselves
们这个
heard,
传播
and now
力提升一点，能把它传出去，
we are capable of
是为了更好的，其实
making
为了更好
our
的帮
voice
助。
heard
当然，我
far
们要
and
展示
wide.
自己形象，那个是这个也无可非议的。
It's natural that we want to
可是啊，我们非常遗
showcasing
憾的看到，
our own image.
西方
Regrettably,
有些人
however,
他们的身体进入了
now
21
in the 21st century, some people in the
但是
West
他们的大脑还
still
停留在
use
冷
Cold
战时代
War，mindset.
做同样的事情，
Even when
西方
talking about
国
exactly
家
the
呢，
same thing,
它是展示
for Western
软实力
countries, they're showcasing
或者叫
soft
巧
power
实力。
or smart power.
到了我们中国就
And
成
when
了
it
别
comes
有
to
用心
China,
的锐实力。
it's sharp power of ulterior
软实力是
motives.
什么 ？soft power 多好
Oh,
听啊，是吧？巧实力 smart
from the
power 多好
mere
听啊。
sound of the
刚
words
才
soft
听到刚才我
and
翻译
smart
说了，这个锐实力是什么 ？sharp power 听着你
and
就
sharp,
那么不舒服
the。sound of the three words can tell you the difference. Such hyping shows that some people in the West still like drawing ideological lines, stick to the Cold War mentality. They are full of prejudice, discrimination, and hostility to China. In essence, it's a new version of China threat theory. Well, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that men often hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they cannot communicate. They cannot communicate because they are separated. In the world today, countries, in particular major countries, need to work for inter-civilizational exchange, for unity of diversity, and build a new type of international relationship featuring win-win cooperation and a community of shared future for the mankind, instead of estranging from, misjudging, and smearing each other with confrontational mindset. Thank you.
请中区第二排第2位这位女记者，凤凰卫视的。
谢谢。我是来自凤凰卫视和凤凰网的记者。我们非常关注的是，因为今年是中国的改革开放40周年。那么在过去的40年里，人民政协在推动国家方方面面各层次的改革开放的进程当中，你们充当了什么样的角色？那么又发挥了怎样的作用？未来还会继续怎么样做？谢谢。
Phoenix TV. This year marks the 40th anniversary of China's reform and opening up. Over the past 4 decades, what role has the CPPCC played in promoting China's reform and opening up in various fields and at various levels, and what will it continue to do in the future? Thank you.
谢谢你给我提了一个很大的题目。
Thank you.
所以我也只能同而回之
such
的
a
同而笼之回
question
答
on
你。
a general topic. I'll give
40
you
年
a
前的
general answer.
1978年春，
40 years ago, in the
中国人
spring
民
of
政治协商会议第5
1978,
届全
the
国委员会第1次会
CPPCC
议在北京召开。
Fifth National Committee
我们
convened
改革
its
开放的
meeting
总设
in
计师
Beijing,
邓小
and
平
the
当
chief
选为
architect
全国
of
政协
reform and opening up, Ms. Deng Xiaoping,
人
was
民政
elected
协
chairman
事业
of the
可以
National
说
Committee,
从那时起
thus
进入了
marking
崭新
a
的发
new
展阶段。
development stage for CPPCC's
40年来
work.
我
40
们人
years
民
on,
政协事业是与国家的改革开
CPPCC's
放一道
work
前进。
moves forward
可以
with
说
reform and opening up
改革开
program.
放使人民政协
Reform and
事业
opening up
重新焕
has
发了蓬勃
reinvigorated
生机和旺盛活力，
CPPCC's work
给人民政
and
协工作开辟
provided
了广阔的舞
a
台
big
和绚丽的
stage
前景。
and bright prospect for us.
人民政协始终坚定地
The
支持改革，
CPPCC firmly
服务改革，
supports and
参与改革开放，
participates in
为全
reform
面
and
推进
opening
改
up
革开放
and makes
做
an
出了重要
important
贡献。
contribution to its
作
all-round
为国家
progress.
协商议政的重要
As
平台，
important platform
人民
for
政协充分
consultation
发挥了代
deliberation
表
of
性强、
political affairs, the
联系面广、
CPPCC fully
包容
leverages
性大
its
这个优势，
advantage of broad
积极地
representation,
为
deep
国家的
ties,
改
and
革开放
inclusive
服务，
participation,
引导
advocates
参加人民政协
reform
的
and
各
opening
党
up,
派
and
团体
encourages
和各族
parties
各界
and
人士
people of various
支持
ethnic
和
groups
参与
and
改革开放，
sectors
最大
to
限度地
support
凝
and
聚
take
共
part
识，
in reform and opening
汇
up,
聚合力，
pour consensus,
政协委
and
员
form
们
synergy as
围
much
绕
as
改革
possible.
开放的重要领域、
CPPCC members
关键环
have
节，
focused on
聚焦
important areas
广
and
大
key
人民
links of
群众
reform and
最为
opening up,
关切的
and the
问
biggest
题、
concerns to the
难题，
people.
深入调研，
They
积极
conducted
协商议政，
in-depth surveys
开
and
展民主监
studies,
督，为改
consultation
革开
and
放出
deliberation
招
of political
谋
affairs
策
and
建言，
democratic
贡
supervision.
献治理
They
支持。
have made
在
recommendations for
推
reform and
动
opening
不
up
断深化改
as an
革开放
intellectual
当中，
support,
可以说是发
thus
挥了不可替
playing
代的
an
重要作用。
irreplaceable role in deepening reform and opening up. In the new era, the CPPCC will more closely unite around the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping as its core, stay committed and redouble efforts to make recommendations to deepen reform and write a new chapter of CPPCC's work. Thank you.
继续提问，请这个西区第二排的那第一位男记者，对，
好，谢谢。中央人民广播电台央广网的记者提问。那我们注意到近年来呢，国企尤其是央企，兼并重组的这个速度是明显加快的。那我就想问，就是企业重组之后的效果如何？是否会产生新的垄断呢？那我们也注意到全国政协委员当中，有不少这方面的权威人士，所以我想请问一下发言人，您是否了解这些权威人士对此的看法？谢谢。
China National Radio recent years has witnessed faster pace in the merger and restructuring of SOEs, especially central SOEs. So I want to ask about the effects of such endeavor and whether it would result in new forms of monopoly. We know that in the CPPCC, there are many authoritative voices in this aspect. Could you please share with us their views? Thank you.
谢谢。刚才
Thank you for your question.
说那些疑问呢？
The question you raised was actually a topic under discussion for years. Since the 18th Party Congress, central SOEs have accelerated the pace of structural adjustment and made steady progress in merger and reorganization. State capital is further concentrating toward key industries and priority sectors, forward-looking and strategic industries, and also competitive enterprises. Through merger and reorganization, central SOEs now have a clearer strategic mandate. They can better fulfill their functions. The allocation of state capital is more efficient. The operational costs have notably dropped. The quality of development is markedly improved. As a result, in group of world-class enterprises with innovation capability and international competitiveness have emerged. Whereas for the impact of merger and restructuring, whether they can produce a multiplying effect, let me just give you one example. Example of China National Machinery Industry Corporation, or Sinomac. According to statistics, the business revenue of the company in 2013 to 2017 was up by 59% compared to the 5 years before the restructuring, and its profit was up by 42%. As for the question whether this will result in a new form of monopoly, I want to stress that the merger and the reorganization of central SOEs is conducted in accordance with laws and regulations, market principles, and the rationale of company's development. Therefore, it is a market-driven process. So the conclusion that reorganization will create monopoly is not accurate. Some experts believe that although some central SOEs have become bigger, stronger, and better through the merger and reorganization, they still have competitors in the domestic market. The merger of Bao Steel and Wu Steel is a case in point. The merged Bao and Wu Steel company also has competitors in the domestic market. Moreover, if we look at this issue from a global and a long-term perspective, there are even more competitors for central SOEs in the international market. So the tasks of building world-class companies, better, stronger, and bigger companies remain a heavy task, and central SOEs need to continue to move up the global value chain. The report to the 19th Party Congress has set out the goal of cultivating globally competitive world-class enterprises. To boost the size, strength, and quality of SOEs is an important means of building world-class enterprises. SOE reform is an important part of our efforts to comprehensively deepen reform. And just now, the journalist said many CPPCC members are quite authoritative on this issue. So my advice for you is to talk to these CPPCC members during the session. You can have a more in-depth interview with them and to see what their perspectives are on this issue. And we also have a press conference of CPPCC members in the economic sector. Maybe you can also ask the question to them. They can provide you with some authoritative opinions. Thank you.
嗯，谢谢。我是香港文汇报大公报的记者。我的问题是，去年年底召开的中央经济工作会议，在谈到区域协调发展战略时，强调要科学规划粤港澳大湾区建设。我想请问政协委员们对港澳地区在利用国家区域协调发展战略，更好地融入国家发展大局有何建议？谢谢。
Da Kong Wenwei from Hong Kong. The Central Economic Work Conference last year discussed the strategy of coordinating development among regions and stressed the importance of sound planning for the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. What advice do CPPCC members have for Hong Kong and Macau to make good use of the aforementioned strategy to better integrate their own development into the overall development of the country? Thank you.
To advance the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area is a major decision of the CPC Central Committee and the State Council. The implementation of this decision can support Hong Kong and Macau's integration into the development of the whole country, deepen cooperation between the mainland and Hong Kong and Macau, produce win-win results, and inject new impetus to the development of Hong Kong and Macau. So, as we said, it is a major decision. Hong Kong needs to fully leverage this major opportunity to further consolidate and upgrade its status as the international financial, shipping, trade, and aviation center, and strengthen its functions as the international center for offshore RMB business, asset management, and risk management. Hong Kong needs to work hard to develop innovation, science and technology, foster emerging industries, make itself an international legal and dispute settlement service center in Asia-Pacific, and become a more competitive metropolis. Macau also needs to fully leverage the opportunity to make itself a world tourism and entertainment center and a service platform for business cooperation between China and Portuguese-speaking countries. It needs to promote appropriately diversified economic development and turn itself into a cultural exchange stage with the Chinese culture as the mainstream and the coexistence of different cultures. We've learned that relevant departments of the central government and local governments of Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau have formulated the outline of the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area. It is being reviewed or will be published after approval. CPPCC members, particularly those from these three places, will pay great attention and make their own contributions to the development of the Greater Bay Area. Thank you.
请继续提问，请中区第2排那第4位记者，对。
谢谢主持人，新华社记者。最近有美国政府官员表示，美国当年支持中国加入世界贸易组织是错误的，因为这并没有使中国经济变得更加开放。请问发言人对此有何评论？谢谢。
Xinhua News Agency. Some U.S. government officials have reportedly said that it was a mistake for the United States to support China's accession to the WTO because the Chinese economy has not become more open ever since. What's your comment?
中国有一句老话，说
Well,
大
as
要
the
有大的
Chinese
样子。
saying goes, the big should
去
act
年
like one.
发布会上，我曾经
At
提
last year's
到过
press
一句话：
conference, I quoted a line that goes,
国之宝也，
credibility is
大
crucial
国啊
to a
更应
country.
该言而有
A
信，
big country should
不能出尔反尔。
honor its words instead of
刚
renege
才
on
记者
its
朋友说了，
promise.
说这个他们觉得当
Well, the
后悔了
journalists just said
这
that
出尔反尔这不好
the。United States
中
may
国自
feel that
从加入世贸组织以
its
来，
decision was a mistake.
认真履
It's
行
not
关
good
税
to
减
renege on
量
its promise.
和市
Since
场开
China
放承诺，
joined WTO, it
反
has
对保护
delivered
主义，
its commitment on
加
tariff
强产权保
concession
护，
market access.
促进
It
公平竞争，
opposes protectionism and intensifies IPR
事实胜
protection
于雄
and has leveled the playing
中
field.
国始终坚
Facts
持走
speak
改
louder than
革开
words.
放的道路，
China pursues
坚
reform
定
and
支
opening
持
up,
开放型世界经济，
firmly supports an
是
open
多
world
边贸易
economy,
体制的
and
维护者、
safeguards
建
and
设者
contributes to
和
the
贡献者。
multilateral trade system.
与此同时，
The thing is,
让许多世贸组
what
织
is
成员感到担忧
worrisome
的，
to many WTO members
恰是美国采
is
取的
the
单边主义，
unilateral actions
出的单边
and
主义声音。
voices from the United States.
我们这里要强调的，作为世贸
We
组
say
织的
here
重要成
that
员，
as important members of the
中美
WTO,
双方
both
啊
China and
都
the
应
US
维护世
need
贸
to
组织规则
uphold
的
the
权威性，
authority of the WTO rules
共同完善，
and together
以世贸组织为核
improve
心，
the
以规则
rules-based,
为基础，公平
fair
开
and
放的
open
多边贸易体
multilateral trade system centered around the WTO.
今年是中国改革开放
This year
40
marks
周
the
年。
40th anniversary of
中
China's
国
reform and
开
opening
放
up
的大门
program. China
只
will
会
only be more
越
open
来
to
越
the
大。
outside world.
中国将继续推动
We will
全面对
continue
外开放，
to promote
加强与国际
opening up in
经
all
贸规则的
respects,
对接，
follow
大
international
幅
trade
度
rules,
放宽市场准入，
substantially
扩大
relax
服务业，
market
特别
access,
是金融业的对外
and
开放，
further
创造
open the
有
services,
吸
in
引力的
particular
国内
banking
投资环
sector,
境。
and create an appealing
所以我们
investment
坚信，一
environment.
个更加开
We are
放的中国
confident
市场
that a more
将对
open Chinese
全球
market
发展
will
做
make
出
even
更
more
重要的
important
贡献。
contribution to global growth. Thank you.
好，请继续提问。请东区第2排第1位这位举手的女记者，黑衣服的。
谢谢主持人，我是中国日报记者。近期有外媒报道，中国官方宣布进行扫黑除恶，引发运动式扫黑和扫黑演变成为地方政府政绩比赛的担忧。请问发言人，您对此有何看法？谢谢。
China Daily. Some foreign media say that the announcement by the Chinese authorities on fighting organized crime gangs could lead to a campaign and competition of performance among local governments. What is your view on this? Thank you.
黑恶势力大家都知道，
Organized crime gangs threaten economic and social development by cancer, threatening people's health. The Chinese people
在
hate them.
全国开展扫
To
黑
carry
除恶
out a
战争
nationwide campaign against organized
是以
crime
习近
gangs
平同志为核心
is
的党中
a
央
major decision
针对
of
当
the
前
CPC Central
涉
Committee
黑
with
涉
Comrade
恶
Xi
问题
Jinping
的
at
新
its
动向
core.
做出的
A decision
顺
that
民心
meets
和民意的
people's
重大决
expectations
策部
and
署。
needs.
它事关
Work
社
in
会
this
大局
field
稳定和国
concerns
家的长治久安，
stability, order,
也事
and
关
security of
人
the
心
country,
相悖
concerns
和
public
基层
support
政权的
for the government. And concerns are great struggle, great project, great cause, and great dream. The CPC Central Committee and State Council in January issued the notice on special campaign against organized crime gangs. This campaign has so far produced some initial progress in different places. You talk about some worries in your question. I believe these worries are unwarranted. Following the provisions of the notice or the announcement, the campaign has been carried out in accordance with law. The CPC Central Committee has made clear that in the campaign, the thinking and approach of the rule of law must be adhered to, and efforts need to be made in a steady manner. It is vital to make sure that every case is handled on the basis of ironclad evidence, and that work in this field can stand the test of law and history. In the campaign, officials need to view their performance for what it is, seek truth from facts, and advance the campaign in a well-planned manner. The CPC Central Committee has firm determination to get the job done, and the legal and policy boundaries are very clear. We are confident that this major, widely supported campaign will fulfill people's expectations and strengthen the rule of law. Thank you.
请西区第3排的第1位那位女记者。
谢谢主持人，我是南方都市报记者。在去年的发布会上，“监督”一词成为发言人您频频提及的关键词。请问，在民主监督方面，全国政协在过去的1年里做了哪些工作，取得了哪些新成效？谢谢。
Southern Metropolis Daily, at last year's press conference, you mentioned the word oversight many times. Over the past year, what has been done and what progress has been made by the CPPCC regarding democratic oversight? Thank you.
还要谢谢你关心。连我去年发布会提到的词儿你都记住，
Thank you
谢谢啊。
for remembering the word I used
围绕
at
党和国
last
家
year's press
重大决策
conference,
部署，
centering around the major decision-making arrangements and reform measures of the party and the country and their execution, the CPPCC National Committee conducts consultative oversight as an important way to fulfill its functions. Last year, National Committee members conducted supervisory studies on business to VAT reform and two-child policy, and targeted poverty alleviation. Altogether, 20 such studies were completed. Members identified problems, made criticisms and suggestions on areas where things fell short of expectations. For example, as I mentioned before, last year, a thematic standing committee meeting was held on targeted poverty alleviation. Before the meeting, over 100 CPPCC National Committee members visited rural households without prior notice to dissect problems. After consultations at various levels and analysis from different perspectives, members put forth suggestions and followed the developments and facilitated the implementation. Well, last year, the National Committee carried out well-planned and productive oversight on specific topics and incorporated oversight into CPPCC work in the form of meetings, visits, proposals, thematic studies, plenary meetings, and information of social developments and people's views, thus strengthening its function of democratic oversight and leveraged its unique strength in consultative oversight. Thank you.
谢谢，我是澎湃新闻记者。今年是新医改推进的第10年，历经10年探索，已经步入深水区的中国医改，依然面临很多深层次的难题有待破解。那么，请问全国政协委员对下一步深化医改、化解难题有何建言良策？谢谢。
The paper. This is the 10th year since the start of the new medical reform. Despite the hard work over the years, many deep-seated problems remain unresolved. What do CPPCC members suggest to deepen the reform and solve the difficult issues? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。
Thank you for your question. Medical reform concerns the well-being of every one of us. It is a major livelihood project that concerns the vital interests of the people. And this has been a constant topic or subject of interest in the press conference. Over the past 5 years, the reform of the medical and healthcare system has been a key area of interest for CPPCC National Committee. The new medical reform has made significant progress in the first decade. First, we have put in place the world's largest network of universal basic medical insurance covering over 1.35 billion people. Second, we have abolished the policy medicine price markup that has been in place for 60 years. As a result, personal contribution to total health expenditure has dropped to below 30%. Third, positive progress has been made in the building of medical consortiums. The tiered diagnosis and treatment system is taking shape. And more quality medical resources are shared by community-level medical institutions. Fourth, the system for medical supply guarantee is being strengthened. These practices demonstrate that medical reform has delivered a greater sense of gains to the people. As we all know, medical reform or healthcare reform is a world challenge. So while making this progress, we must recognize that as medical reform enters the deep water zone, there are still a lot of difficulties that need to be addressed. For instance, access and affordability of medical services remain a problem in some localities. Many community hospitals are yet to become hospitals in our neighborhood, and they have not been able to demonstrate or fulfill their due functions. Overuse of drugs still exists, and medical insurance fraud also happens from time to time. With improved living standards and heightened health awareness, people will only have higher demand for their quality of life and also health and safety. They will not just want affordable and accessible medical services, they will also hope to maybe they will not require or need medical services at all. So this will bring about extensive and higher public demands for health. Without a healthy population, there will be no prosperous society. The implementation of the Healthy China strategy is an important strategic arrangement made by the CPPCC National Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at the core for the purpose of upholding and developing socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, and also an internal requirement of China's medical and healthcare industry in the new era. The CPPCC will continue to care about people's concerns, take a problem-driven approach, and continue to organize its members to conduct surveys and supervision and offer actionable solutions to the difficulties in reform. In the interest of time, we will allow one more question.
提问之前一直特别的紧张，真的锲而不舍的举手，终于换来了提问机会。特别感谢主持人能够把最后一个机会留给了我，谢谢您。发言人您好，我是北京电视台的记者，所以呢，我也特别关注北京以及周边地区的发展情况。那么，其实我相信每一个生活在北京的人都会有切身的感受，就是去年入冬以来呢，北京以及周边一些地区的空气质量明显的好转了。但是同时呢，人们也会有这样的担忧，就是说这样的蓝天白云会不会难以持久呢？而与此同时啊，当然我们也都知道，就是真的之所以会有这样空气质量的好转，我们是付出了代价的。所以现在呢，协调大气污染治理和发展经济、改善民生之间的关系，已经成为了公众普遍关注的热点话题之一。所以我也想问一问政协委员对此有什么看法呢？谢谢。
With BTV, thank you very much for this opportunity. Since I'm from Beijing, I'm very much interested in the development of Beijing and the neighboring areas. All those living in Beijing can see that the air in Beijing and the neighborhood has been much better the past winter, but we are not sure whether the clear sky is here to stay. And we know that the cleaner air has come at a price. So how to strike a balance between controlling air pollution and ensuring economic development and people's well-being has become a much debated topic. What is the view of CPPCC members in this regard? Thank you.
谢谢。我看我们自埋也得要有你锲而不舍举手的那个镜头。
As we try to address smoke, we should persist as you have done. Smoke-related questions have been raised at press conferences of almost every year's 2 sessions in recent years. It's not easy to give a good answer. The year 2017 was the concluding year for implementing the State Council's 10-point regulations on air pollution control. Various targets were fulfilled on schedule. In particular, air quality in Beijing, Tianjin, or Hebei reached a high level unseen in recent years. People living in Beijing experienced more days of blue sky and white clouds, therefore had less enthusiasm to post pictures of clear sky in the circle of friends on cell phones. As to whether the sky will stay clear, we cannot be too optimistic. As you mentioned, air quality has improved significantly because the CPC Central Committee has taken strong measures to win the battle against pollution. Heavy price has been paid in the process, and meteorological conditions are sound. So, progress has been made thanks both to people's efforts and heaven's help. In the past couple of days, probably heaven gave us less help, so the weather was not as good as before. Meanwhile, we must be keenly aware that environmental problems have occurred because our ways of growth, production, and life are not eco-friendly. This issue is far from being fundamentally addressed. We must stress here that air pollution control doesn't contradict economic development and people's well-being. Lucid waters and large mountains are invaluable assets. Serious emission and pollution affect not only our long-term development, but also people's lives and health. This is not what we want. Therefore, as we transition from high-speed growth to high-quality development, we should spare no effort to improve industrial, energy, and transport structures, address pollution at the root, and pursue resource-conserving, eco-friendly way of development and production. Meanwhile, it is important to pool the efforts of everyone, encourage simple, moderate, green, and low-carbon way of life, and pursue efficiency, harmony, and sustainability in economic and social development. Air pollution control is a complex, long-term and systemic task. But as long as everyone takes it seriously and carries out resolute and solid actions, we will be able to make our sky blue. We are fully confident in this. The CPPCC has attached great importance to environmental protection in recent years. At this year's Standing Committee meetings, one of the two themes of discussion is pollution control challenges and suggestions for addressing them. CPPCC members will conduct in-depth studies and provide their suggestions in this field. Thank you.
新闻发布会到此结束，谢谢大家。
And that was the press conference given by the CPPCC spokesman, Wang Guoqing, ahead of the opening of the session on Saturday. He fielded 15 questions covering a whole range of issues. John Michele, not quite the, can't quite compare to the 4-hour marathon session that he had last time, Q&A, but still covered a very comprehensive amount of topics. What stood out for you in all of this? John, let's start with you.
First, I want to mention that according to my notes is 16 questions.
16.
But nevertheless, I think what my biggest takeaway from this press conference, which covers a broad range of issues here, is he's talking about things related to our foreign policy. He talks about the criticism of China posing as a sharp power. He rebutted the idea of a sharp power. I'm very surprised that I even quoted Martin Luther King. He talks about why people hate each other because they fear each other, they don't fear each other because they don't know each other, and because they don't communicate with each other because they're separate from each other. I think it's very important. I'm really surprised of that. Second, he talked about the criticism of China not living up to the WTO's obligations. This is totally rebutted, yeah. And also, I think he mentioned issue about this non-ME issue here. I guess a lot of people don't know about this. The non-ME issue is really about the non-market economy status not recognized by the United States and European Union. According to our WTO accession protocol, it is supposed to end in 2016, but now both parties, U.S. and European Union, is reneging on this. So I think he talked about this as well. And another thing I think it's actually of much concern to my own interest is that he talks about the implications of the SOE reform. The journalist, the reporter, raised the question about whether the consolidation of SOEs was going to pose some challenge for the anti-monopoly cause here in China. He elevated this issue to a more international level. He said that according to the President Xi Jinping's policy, we're trying to make our SOEs more globally competitive. So this antitrust issue needs to be looked at in a more global context. I think that's a very new message, because I'm an expert in antitrust area. So I think this is a really new message to me. Yeah. So that's my biggest takeaway from this 70 minutes marathon press conference. 75. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Following up on the WTO, I think there is a little bit of misunderstanding. Maybe that's what causes a little bit of friction between China and the rest of the world. It is true that the European Union did not grant China the status of market economy, and there is a little bit of ambiguity in the interpretation of Article 15 of the WTO, where China believes that in 2016, no matter what, it would enter should be granted the status of market economy, and the European Union interpretation is no, this is not a automatic granting, it is only on fulfillment of conditions. Now, rightly so, we heard a lot of emphasis on China actually having made a lot of progress over the last 16 years. And I believe that misunderstanding is in the way that Chinese and foreign analysts, economists analyze the Chinese development. China focuses on the evolution over time, and so China emphasizes the progress has been made, and of course China has made a lot of progresses. The West, and especially the American economists, analyze China today comparing with the US today. And so, of course, on that, using that criteria, of course, China still has room to grow. And so the US and the European Union say, oh, we do not have the same access to China than Chinese companies have to Europe. And so it depends on which angle you look at. If you look at the status quo and compare China today with Europe today, maybe it is correct to say that European, in some cases, is more open than the rest than China. But looking at the evolution over time, China has made a lot. And so I think the way to solve this is, and that's what I do when I talk to my European counterparts, is give China time. Do not always use today China versus today's Europe, because China is still it is the second biggest economy in the world, but the average income per capita is still very low. We're looking at around $10,000 per person. And so China is number 70, 75 in the list of GDP per capita in the world. So it's a big economy made up of people that have not yet reached the target of a relatively well-off society. And so I think in Europe, we need to make an extra effort to grant China a little bit more time. And China's normal response is, well, you know, when the West was at $8,000–9,000 per capita, it was not open to trade.
Right.
So why should China now, which has now reached this level, be more open than the West was at the time? And so we go back to that kind of a philosophical distinction. Right. Do we analyze over time and we clap China for the progress made? And I think that's what we should do, well, and that's our job to try to bridge this gap. But that's what we do here.
I want to make a comment on this issue you mentioned about the NME issue. I mean, if you look at Article 15D, it's very clear to me that it says the expiry of that is going to be on this date. And taking into the context when this is negotiated, back when China was accepting to WTO, the meaning is very clear. I think what the European stance is basically playing a legalese game, in my opinion. You know, I've actually written an article about this. Published in CGTN's a new media platform, exactly talking about this issue. This issue wasn't brought up, you know, several years ago. It was only brought up near towards the 2016, when China's economy is expanding, when China's exports is expanding. This becomes an issue. Yeah. But anyway, I think, you know, the more broader picture is that, you know, under President Xi, you know, this country is undergoing a fundamental change, especially on the global stage, on a global arena. China is playing a more increasingly governance role, and is participating in a global governance role in a rule-based system. And this is in the context of, you know, Donald Trump's, the current U.S. administration is sort of backing away from this, backing away from the international system institutions that U.S. helped build up, and is, you know, taking a more sort of unilateral or bilateral approach towards international trade. So I think that's posing a lot of challenges for the relationship between U.S. and China. And if you ask me the question, what would I be asking the question if I was in that audience? I would be asking this question, you know, what's China's future strategy with respect to the Sino-U.S. relationship, the most important foreign relationship of the 21st century? And I think there's a lot of challenges in that area.
But a lot of it would obviously depend on what the U.S. would do too, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us on the show and for sharing your insights with us, Michele Geraci and Professor John Gong.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, we also we have our reporter Wang Hui, who's standing by at the conference hall. Now, we talked to her at the beginning, the start of the conference. Let's get back to her now. Wang Hui, hi. So we had 75 minutes there of Q&A. Just sum up some of the highlights for us.
Well, the CPPCC has just wrapped up its first press conference during the two sessions. It lasted for about 75 minutes, and it covered about 16 questions. And it really covered a wide range of issues, including China's economy, China-Japan bilateral relations, China's soft power, medical reform, and poverty alleviation. And this conference has really drawn much attention from the global journalists. And as you know, the economic development has always drawn great attention. Last year, China's GDP was 6.9%. And so the spokesman Wang Guoqing said that China's economy was improved and developed in a very stable way, including the economic operation, crisis, international balance payment, and job creation. All these areas have developed in a very stable way. And he also talked about China's soft power. As we know, the spokesman Wang Guoqing, he was a veteran journalist for over 20 years, and he was once appointed as the DC correspondent for China Radio International. So he was very familiar with both domestic and international media outlets. So he said that some Western countries think China tried to shape its international image by international communication, and but he said that this is a very good way.
All right, Wang Hui, thank you so much for summing that up for us, our reporter at the press conference. And that's it for our special coverage of the two sessions. That was the CPPCC opening press conference. I'm Jiaying in Beijing. Thank you so much for watching. Africa Live is up ahead. Bye-bye.